I got another Tip Tuesday video for you guys today, and in this video we're going to take a look at my top 8 blackjack tips that I still follow to this day when I go to the casino, things that I do and things that I look for that I think you will want to know. But if you're new to this channel, welcome. This is A1 Blackjack, the channel where we teach you how to count cards fast. So if that sounds good to you, stick around, because not only am I going to give you my top 8 things to look for, I'm also going to, at the end of this video, give you a little bit of a quiz to see if you can decipher which table out of 3 is the correct one. And then I'm going to see if you can get that right at the end. All right, so first off, my very first tip, I'm going to try to keep this going pretty quick today. The first one is that you want to look for a 3-2 table. And before you turn this video off, because that is so obvious, some people don't know that. And 2, I think you're going to find some more value in these tips later on. But make sure that your table says that it is a 3-2 paying for blackjacks. If it is not, if it is 6-5, you do not want to play that table. Now, there are a lot of tables that are getting very good at hiding the fact that they are 6-5. And if you can't figure out what the table is just by looking at it, like this one I think is pretty obvious, it says it in a couple places. But if you can't figure that out, ask the dealer. It is much better to ask, because they have to tell you. It's much better to ask than to be wrong and play a 6-5, because you'll probably get a few rounds, 10, 15 rounds in. Maybe you get a blackjack or see someone else get a blackjack and you're like, that's not the right payment. And you might ask then, and then it's too late. All right, you need to know from the get-go that it is a 3-2. All right, tip number 2, the penetration. As you are playing, maybe it's a shoe game like this, you need to know exactly what that penetration is. And you also need to know that if there are multiple tables available to you, and maybe one dealer is cutting about 2 decks off, or a deck and a half like this, and another dealer is cutting just a little bit less than a deck, you need to know which one's better. Do you know? If they cut off less, that is better for the player. If the further it is up towards the top, like this cut card here, that is worse for you. So you want a cut card that's further back, as you're gonna get a more true count. The closer you get to that cut card, your count, like I said, is gonna become more true. And we have more of an advantage as card counters the further that is back into the shoe. All right, tip number 3 is gonna be rounds per hour. You want to play faster tables. Now, how do I get that? And first off, let me talk even about why. Why do I want to play fast tables? Well, because if we are playing with an advantage, right, we're playing advantage blackjack, we're taking that 0.5% or so edge that the casino has, and we're flipping it to ourselves, and maybe even getting a 1 to 2% edge, depending on what the count is. We want to play as many rounds as possible at that advantage, because that's going to compound on itself and create bigger wins, right? If you can, the law of large numbers says that the more and more and more that you can play with a slight advantage, the more likely outcome it is that you're going to win. All right, now how do I get a fast table? What am I even looking for here? 1, if you can play heads up, that's gonna be just you and the dealer. You're not gonna be playing those side bets. You're just gonna be you and the dealer. It's gonna go nice and quick. You kind of control the pace of it. You can go as fast as you can count. As fast as you can count. Don't try to go faster than that, because you wanna make sure your count is accurate. 2, if you're playing at a table with other people and they're playing with side bets, that takes forever. Don't do that, okay? Even if it's you and one other person and they're playing with side bets, that's gonna take way too long. It's gonna just really drag on that game. All right, and then of course the last thing is, if you have a fast dealer, that's going to be preferred over a slow, maybe elderly, unfortunately, person who is dealing. If you can get someone nice and quick, again, go as fast as you can count. All right, tip number 4, double deck, 6 deck, 8 deck, maybe even single deck, right? What is preferred? Well, typically, if you look at the advantage, or I guess the house edge, I should say, double deck has the lowest house edge, 6 deck has the next lowest, and then 8 deck is the highest. Meaning that double deck is preferred over 6 deck, 6 deck is preferred over 8 deck. All right, now, is there some slight differences that may or may not affect those? Yes, there are. You need to take those into consideration, but kind of rule of thumb is the fewer the decks, the better. Now, there are other rules, like I said, that can kind of compensate for that, like maybe single deck 6-5. That's not going to be playable, right? But that's why I put 3-2 at the beginning of this list. Lastly, the other rules of the game, like S17, DAS, RSA, Do you even know what those mean? You need to know what those mean if you want to become an advantage blackjack player. S17 stands for when a dealer stands on a soft 17, whereas H17 games are when dealers hit on a soft 17, an ace 6. That is the cutoff, right? In my table, if I look at just what the felt says, I know I've played sometimes different, sometimes this, but this is that a dealer needs to draw to 16 and stand on all 17s, meaning even a soft 17, an ace 6, the dealer would stand on that. This is an S17 table, okay? That is preferred. What about DAS? What does that stand for? That stands for double after split. Doubling after split, let's say you have a pair of 7s versus a dealer's 4. If I split those and then I pull a 2 to get 9 versus a dealer's 4, I want to make sure I can double down on that. There are some tables that don't allow you to double down after you split your cards. Those are worse tables than tables that do allow you to double down after splits. RSA, that stands for re-splitting aces. If you get a pair of aces, you split them, you usually typically get one other card. But if you get another ace, some casinos don't let you re-split that ace again. You want to make sure, well, if possible, that your casino lets you re-split your aces. There are some that don't, and that rule maybe isn't as big a deal as some of the others. And I could go on and on talking about the different rules and kind of things like that, but you want to make sure you know the rules that you're playing, and I'll show you why here in just a little bit. All right, but that brings me to number 6. The 6th thing on this list is the limits. Now, if you have a small bankroll, lower limits are going to be probably better for you, as when you're playing your minimum bet, that's probably going to be the table minimum. And if you play through, counts of 0 or maybe slightly negative, I wouldn't suggest that, which we'll get to in here a little bit. But if you're playing with the low table minimum, that's going to reduce the edge that the casino has. And if you're on the other end of the spectrum, I should say, and you want as high limits as possible because your max bets are probably going to be nearing that higher side of your limits. So you want to know your limits depending on what your bankroll is, whether it's low or high, you need to account for that. All right, and then that brings me to my 7th tip, and that's going to be that if you, again, do have a low bankroll, kind of a small one, like a $5,000 to $10,000 bankroll, you want to make sure you are able to wong in and wong out. Why, or what does that even mean? If you wong in, it's named after Stanford Wong, a famous, one of the kind of fathers of our game, a blackjack great, you might say. If you wong in, that means that you are waiting. You're kind of back counting behind the table, just kind of acting like you're interested in the game. They don't really know who you are yet. And then when the count jumps to probably a true 1.5, maybe 2, then you jump in and you are automatically playing with an advantage those first few hands until the count drops back down to 0 or lower, okay? Because at a true 1 is about when you gain the edge. And so if you can jump in at a 1.5 or even a 2, then there's probably going to be a few rounds where you're going to have that edge. And like I said, you probably want to play down until about 0. And then anything negative, you can guarantee that you do not have the edge with that. Even 0.5 or lower, maybe even 1 or lower, depending on the game and the rules, you might want to get up and walk away. All right, now, is that hard to find? Absolutely it is. It is very rare that you can just stand and the first game you see is going to jump to a +1 or higher. All right, you might have to stand behind a table for 20, 45, maybe an hour before you can see those counts jump to where they need to be, but your bankroll will thank you. That is one of the best things you can do if you have a small bankroll, is to wong in and wong out. All right, that brings me to my 8th tip, 8th and final tip here. This one's going to be the longest because we have a little quiz at the end, remember. And that's going to be don't wing it. You need to know what you are doing when it comes to the count and counting cards and just all this advantage play stuff before you get to the casino. In fact, I want to show you a little show and tell here. I dug up one of my old notebooks and I used to manually deal myself 6 decks. All right, and I would have a starting bankroll and I would go through, I would count the time that it took, the penetration, if my count was on or off. This is when I was first starting. I was off quite a bit, you can see there, and whether I won or lost any money. All right, I would play with these chips. I did that for just hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of these different games. I analoged every single one All right, the good news is that you don't have to do that anymore because the sponsor of this video is Blackjack Apprenticeship. They do it for you, all right? They keep track of all your stats, and if you become a member of Blackjack Apprenticeship, you can practice on there and get the rounds per hour in even faster because you're not dealing to yourself. You're doing it all digitally. So I'm going to throw it over to myself, tell you a little bit more about the Blackjack Apprenticeship membership. So this is kind of their site here. This is the members side of things, and they do a bunch of free stuff as well. But specifically in the members site, they have access to a few of my favorite things I'll talk about. One is going to be the pro betting software. The pro betting software is essential if you want to be a card counter and do this thing kind of pro or semi-pro, because it allows you to throw in your own numbers, your own bankroll, whether the table is S17 or H17. All right, it kind of spits out what to do in a 1 to 8, 1 to 10, whether you're playing just one hand, whether you're playing two hands. And also it shows you that expected value versus the risk of ruin, right? And you very much need to know that, otherwise you could potentially go broke and lose all your money there at the tables. We don't want that to happen. All right, going back out here, a couple other things that Blackjack Apprenticeship has that I would want you to look at is one is the Casino 411. If you ever want to take a blackjack trip, I would highly recommend that you check out Casino 411. It shows you not only how many tables, blackjack tables, there are at a specific casino, but also shows you the penetration on those tables, all right? So whether they cut off one deck or 0.7 of a deck or half a deck or whatever, if you're playing double deck or something like that. And then sometimes the table conditions as well. Like if you kind of click into the reports, it might show you that a certain dealer is very fast or slow and which ones to avoid, maybe certain times a day to avoid those things, okay? All right, and then the last part of Blackjack Apprenticeship that I personally really enjoy, they have a lot of other features too, but that's gonna be the training suite. This is where I spend most of my time, and you can learn some of the different aspects of the game, like the running count, get really good at that, the true count, all right, maybe some deviations. Then when you're ready, my favorite part is the test out. This kind of gives you about 3 different shoes that you can go through and test your abilities playing with the correct bet spreads, all right, the correct decisions, the correct deviations, all right, and then it also evaluates all that. And until you can pass that at a pretty good percent of 100% every single time, I probably would not go to the actual casino until I can get maybe 5 to 10 100s in a row. That's my personal goal. If you want to be a little more risky, I suppose that's your prerogative. But those are some of my favorite things about Blackjack Apprenticeship. Okay, so one thing that I would encourage you to do is if you are serious about getting that, or if you just want to look into it, I have a link down below this video that takes you to kind of my affiliate page with Blackjack Apprenticeship. I am an affiliate with them, so if you click on my link and choose to purchase, I do get a little bit of kickback. But also on that page, Colin Jones, the founder of Blackjack Apprenticeship, goes through some of the different things that you can find on that site, including the pro betting software, the training suite, like I mentioned, and some of the other cool aspects with a little bit of a video on each. So go ahead and check that out after this video. Some of those different aspects of Blackjack Apprenticeship I think are pretty awesome. All right, guys, that brings me to our quiz. Let's see if you learned anything in this video. And I have 3 different tables for you that I want you to kind of consider and decide which table would you play if these were all available options. All right, table number 1 is going to be a double deck game. It's going to be S17. It has limits of $25 to $2,500. Its penetration is 1.25, meaning that 0.75 of those 2 decks are cut off. There are 4 people playing, and you're getting 50 rounds per hour. All right, so consider that. Table 2 is a 6-deck game. This is going to be an S17 table, where it's $15 to $1,500 limits. Its penetration is 5 decks, which means 1 deck is cut off. You're playing heads up. It's just you and the dealer, and you can get 200 rounds per hour in. And then table number 3, this is also a 6-deck game, but this time it's H17, but lower minimums, $10 to $500. Its penetration is 4.75, meaning that 1.25 decks are cut off, and it is you and 1 other person playing at the table, so your rounds per hour are going to be 150 rounds per hour. All right, I think there is a clear winner here of which table I would go sit down at. But I'm interested to know if you learned anything in this video and if you can kind of decipher which one is best for you. So let me know down in the comments, which one would you pick and why? That's going to be the kicker. Why would you pick the one that you pick? Let me know that down below. And until next time, guys, remember, this is A1 Blackjack.